How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back. I'm Blake B. Welcome back to BB's Finds. This is the only channel on YouTube where a guy talks about his collections, the history of his collections, the history behind his history of the collections while sitting in a closet that's shared with his wife. Um, as you can see, the wife's clothes behind me. Not going to talk about the clothes today. Maybe one day she'll do a video talking about her clothes collection. Today I have another DVD video, um, a little redundant DVD video, but it's going to be about the all the documentary type DVDs that I collect, mostly in the science, quantum physics, astrophysics, a lot of theoretical stuff, realm, some mythology, some spirituality as well. I did for a time. I was accruing a lot of the history DVDs, like especially the Ken Burns history DVDs. Those are currently residing with my father-in-law in San Diego. He retired. He's a Civil War buff. I gave him a stack probably about that big of mostly the Ken Burns stuff just to pass the time. Um, why I collect these DVDs, I think that the number one reason is education, just to have on hand as a reference, much like I talked about some of the books that I read, like the Joe Campbell books, having around as reference points. I think a lot of this has to do with documenting science, documenting spirituality and mythology. I think it's very important to have, especially because most of this type of program matter would be, at least in my mind, released and maintained by public broadcasting. There's been some talks over the years of defunding public broadcasting. I don't want to get into politics today. Thankfully, we can still have public broadcasting. Not only do they receive public funds, but they also receive private funds. There's donations. I highly recommend donating to public broadcasting, NPR, as well as your local libraries to keep things like this, keep ideas like these from being around. I always think about the Library of Alexandria, in the olden times, as my kids would say, which burned down. It contained all the knowledge of history and things like that. A lot of written manuscripts, and it burned down. And I think society went back a couple steps in terms of trying to build that knowledge base back up. But I think a lot of this stuff inspires not only the scientific and hard science aspects, but the more theoretical aspects, thinking about our place in the universe and things like that. So I think I want to kick it off. I have kind of a couple genres, as I mentioned. I do want to kick it off with a couple spirituality DVDs. I don't have much in the way of spirituality DVDs. I did have a Ram Dass DVD at one time. There's a Ram Dass documentary, or at least a few Ram Dass documentaries you can watch on streaming services. The first one is called Spirit Space. This has to do with the subconscious, and it's a journey, and it's an inner journey stuff. Prominently featured in this is Don Miguel Ruiz, who's the author of The Four Agreements. I also recommend reading that book. It's a very short read, but it's kind of a good way to learn about how to think, how to live, etc. One of them is don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. I speak extemporaneously here. I don't do research. I think there's a kind of speak what's in my head or what's in my mind. There's a kind of this whole thing of, at least in podcasting, of people not wanting to be wrong and over researching, and it just kind of takes away from the fun of whatever topic they're talking about. Don't make assumptions, though. I think that's true in what you hear about people talking about you, and most other aspects of life. So Spirit Space, it's a short one, I think. Only 82 minutes. Check it out. Next up, we got Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's a lot to be said about Buddhist spirituality and how they revere the existence and things like that. To get into talking about like Bardo, the kind of like spirit space, rebirth, and things like that. This one is narrated by Leonard Cohen, the musician, no longer with us, but great musician of his day, and just a interesting watch, learning about the kind of the way they prepare for death too. I think there's a stigma in Western society about how death is this thing to be feared, and I think at least I would like to think when my time comes, that I'd be at peace with it and ready for the next part of whatever. I don't know. I don't have answers. That's why I watch this stuff, because it gives me some insights into people who may have the answers. Next up, we have a documentary called William Gibson No Maps. William Gibson's an author, American author. He did the Neuromancer book, among others. He's well known. The group Sonic Youth actually uses a lot of William Gibson's terminology and things like that in their songs. The big thing about William Gibson is he was the first person to term to coin the phrase internet and cyberspace and things like that. This is a long time before we actually had in the 1990s, when we started getting like America Online and Prodigy and things like that. This is before, I think, in the 60s or 70s, when he was writing these books. He was coming up with these concepts, and a lot of this stuff has to do with very heady, almost like virtual reality stuff, like Matrix almost. They have not made a Neuromancer movie to date, but one of these days they will. It's a great book. I've listened to the audiobook as well. Gibson does the voices, or the narration rather, in the audiobook. It was a good listen. So this is No Maps. They basically just follow him around, get his sort of views on Western society, how things have changed with technology. Interesting stuff. I highly recommend checking it out. Next up, we have a double down right here of Carl Jung. Matters of the Heart, and in his own words, Jung is a psychologist by trade. He's almost like a theoretical psychologist, I would call him. He talks a lot about the archetypes, which I am very interested in because of storytelling, and archetypes being the different types of characters and different types of personalities in the world. Jung is a huge influence on many other people that in spirituality, psychology, mythology, things like that. Check it out. Very well done stuff. Back in this one's done in the 1950s, and this one's done in the 90s. When Jung was gone, so Jung passed away a while back. But it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Some archival interviews. Next up, we have Campbell, Joseph Campbell. I've talked about this one extensively before. This is the Power of Myth DVD. This is the conversational six-part conversational piece with Joe Campbell and Bill Moyers, talking about all aspects of mythology. Very tangential. Moyers is in his questions are very just basic type questions, but then Campbell can talk forever. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. And then we have The Hero's Journey, which gets a little bit into his Hero with a Thousand Faces concepts. This is a pretty short one too. This is only like an hour, but it's good stuff. And then we have a newer one for me, Sukhavati. It has to do with religion, spirituality, things like that, as Joe Campbell does. Good stuff. So that's pretty much it for my non science type documentaries. I do have a couple documentaries that I like. I also like filmmaking documentaries. There's one called American Movie that's highly recommended. It's about these guys in the Midwest in the 1990s trying to make a horror movie on the cheap. It's classic. It's very funny. It's heartbreaking at times. It's kind of a roller coaster, which is why I like it. I also like Jodorowsky's Dune, which I mentioned on this channel before. the concept is about making how Alejandro Jodorowsky wanted to make Dune, flesh out Dune as a book, and this is back in the late 1960s, early 1970s, and the production just kind of snowballed and kind of took on a life of its own, and then from there, basically, they ran out of money. Producers didn't want to do it anymore because of the way Jodorowsky wanted to do it. So there's that, and then I think there's one more that I want to talk about too in that realm. It's called it's not about filmmaking. It's called King of Kong: Fistful of Quarters. It's about video games and in the competitive environment of arcade games, with some of the top Donkey Kong players in the world, among other video games. It's a good one. It's a roller coaster like the others. It's a lot of ups and downs, but it's a fantastic, well done documentary. There's been some other stuff throughout the years. There's one called The Act of Killing that was recently done, I think maybe 5 years ago, about, I want to say it was in Indonesia. This general who was in charge of basically this genocide. He would reenact all the some of the things he did in a very genre driven way. They did like 5 or 6 different genres in the movie, but the way they filmed it was really weird and unique. I don't think there's many movies quite like that. I would say that's up there in my all-time documentaries as well. Okay, so, and those are more feature type documentaries. I think a lot of this stuff, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, might be a little bit. I mean, a lot of this stuff is like home video, reference stuff. But those are more like you can actually go to a movie theater, watch it, and things like that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the science stuff I have. We'll start with something called The Story of Math: How Numbers Explain and Reveal Unseen Worlds, and this is done by the Athena company. Anytime I see the Athena symbol, it's almost like looking for like a label on a record, like the name of a record label. Athena puts out some very good stuff. They put out a lot of Joseph Campbell stuff as well. This has to do with numbers going back in mathematical forms, going back in history. This is about 3 discs long. It's about like 4 or 5 hours or so. It's good stuff. It talks a lot about the philosophy behind mathematics, and it's a good watch. Next up, we have something that I found that's very unique. This is put out by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. It's a box set called DNA. It's the only one I've ever seen, but it's a 5-disc set. Why I picked this up? I pick up science videos from time to time, but this has to do with the kind of the minutia of DNA. There's a disc called The Secret of Life, another called Playing God, another one called The Human Race, another one called Curing Cancer, another one called Pandora's Box. Now, what kind of the pull for me though is the narrator, Jeff Goldblum. He's the narrator of all 5 of these. A familiar voice, Dr. Ian Malcolm, of course, from Jurassic Park. Seth Brundle from The Fly, talking about DNA. Very fitting, very fitting. So, yeah, I haven't really dug in much to these. This is just more of a reference point if one day I'm interested in watching it, or one day the kids are learning about DNA in school or something like that, or have questions, maybe we can dig in a little bit more. But I do like having it around. And again, it's the only one I've seen. It's I don't even know the value of it. I couldn't tell you. Okay, so let's talk about hard. Let's talk about hard science in terms of space. So I've got some space DVDs. I've got one called Traveler's Guide to the Planets. It's about our solar system. It touches on the sun, the moon, and the various planets, the 9 planets, including Pluto, which is now, I believe, a planet again. They declassified it to a dwarf planet, which a number of years ago, but I'm pretty sure it's a planet again. I could be wrong, but this has to do with some really good CGI and some really good photography of the planets and things like that. Great watch. Learning about our closest friends, the other planets. Then we have Journey to the Edge of the Universe, which is about whatever's way out there. Through through various different types of photography, not as close as obviously the planet stuff. Something, viewing things and looking for small changes, maybe in color, something like that. The This one's done narrated by Alec Baldwin. So it's for another familiar voice, kind of walking us through this and talking about some of the stars, nebula, galaxies that we've discovered since technology has enabled us to, and I think that's only going to get more and more with time. Things that they can observe that are very far away. It's referred to light years, so it's a lot of this stuff may not even be around in real time because of the light decay and things like that, coming from light years away. So it's just interesting to learn about. And maybe one day we'll find another planet that's actually inhabitable, similar to Earth. Now traveling there is going to be a bit of an issue, but hey, at least we know something is there could be a potential for other life like us in the world, or in the universe rather. We've got next up we have some real hard science, some stuff that I'm interested in, rocket ships. So this is a series put out by NASA and 20th Century Fox called the Gemini series. This has to do with the space program in the 1960s and the follow-up to Project Mercury. The Gemini was the successor to Mercury, and in trying to get out into the atmosphere and things like that. In our first our first steps into outer space. Then, of course, we have this one actually does not have the cover, but this is called the Saturns, the Mighty Saturns, mostly dealing with the Saturn V rocket, which is the rocket that's enabled space travel enough so to get to the moon. Saturn V rocket is probably one of the greatest. I put it at maybe definitely in the top 5 greatest technological innovations of the probably of the last century. Among other things, the SR-71 Blackbird, now decommissioned aircraft, but used for military purposes. There's actually one of SR-71 if you visit what's called the Palmdale Bird Park, Palmdale, California. We've been. There's also an A-12 there. There's also the airplane, I think it's like a 747 that carried the Endeavour shuttle from Florida, or Houston rather, from Houston to Los Angeles, and now it's in the museum, the Science Museum in downtown Los Angeles. We visited it a few times already. It's great stuff. But the Saturn V rocket, I've seen one of these at the Smithsonian. Just a fantastic marvel of engineering. Kind of makes me wonder why we don't do more missions to the moon, or perhaps Mars. I know Mars is probably a little bit more expensive than the moon, but it would be nice to know a little bit more about the moon and maybe run some science type stuff on it. Although Saturn V rocket's very expensive to make, so maybe that's our reason. Maybe we're more focused on trying to allocate those funds and use those funds to help humanity here on Earth rather than space exploration. But I think the future is going to hold something similar, where we're going to have some sort of technological innovation, mostly out of necessity at this point, to try to do space travel. We've got a couple people working on things right now. Elon Musk is doing his Falcon rockets, and then Jeff Bezos from Amazon, his end game is to actually build spacecraft that will enable consumer travel outside of Earth's atmosphere. So just something to look forward to. Saturn's, I've only seen this one once, and I've only seen the Gemini one once. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about theoretical physics and astrophysics. This one's a set called Space Time in the Universe with Brian Greene. He wrote both Elegant Universe and Fabric of the Cosmos, the books. So these are the video versions of those books, talking about a lot of theoretical physics, including a little bit of astrophysics, mostly about space time and things like that. It's kind of an interesting topic, because we can't really prove anything, but we have some very, very strong theories and very, very strong research in the areas. Next up, we have something along those similar lines. We have probably the most well-known theoretical astrophysicist, Stephen Hawking, no longer with us, but this is a 3-disc set called Stephen Hawking's Universe. On it, he talks about the Big Bang, on the dark side, black holes, and beyond. So he's like I consider him like a black hole specialist, in terms of his knowledge and theories of how black holes actually work. Something that I think would be nice to actually know and see and observe, and how and where the matter actually goes once it gets sucked into a black hole. But yeah, here we have Hawking. It's good stuff. Next up, we have a guy who you may recognize, Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is Origins. So he did this before he was really super well known. I mean, he's pretty well known in science circles, but this is before he did Cosmos. Resurrection of the Cosmos. So this is about our life, our place in the universe, and how we got here, and why we're here, and things like that. A lot of theoretical stuff. It's called 14 Billion Years of Cosmic Evolution. At least that's the subtitle. Hosted by author Neil deGrasse Tyson. He also writes books. There's one called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. It's a quick read. It's fairly good, comprehensive, kind of layman's stuff. Speaking of Neil deGrasse Tyson, we have the Cosmos. This is the Space-Time Odyssey. So this is the resurrection of the Carl Sagan. It sort of expounds a little bit more on the Carl Sagan Cosmos that was put out in the 1980s. Released on like PBS. This one was done on, I believe, Fox. So it's done on a major network. There combines some animation as well as science type talk. The sets are great too. He talks a little bit about the Library of Alexandria in here, and the same concept I just referred to, which is kind of coincidental, about losing knowledge and how they had to kind of start over again after they lost all that stuff in Alexandria. It's a lot of theoretical physics. A lot of things that are maybe a little bit easier, little concepts that are maybe a little bit easier to grasp when actually seeing things on a television screen than reading about it in a book. It's maybe sometimes there's, especially with like Hawking makes things a little easier, but there's still some concepts that are a little hard to play out when you're just looking at words rather than seeing how things would look. So Cosmos, A Space-Time Odyssey, check it out. Highly recommend it. Then we have, I've actually got 2 of these. I don't know why I have 2 of them. The 7-disc Cosmos sets, Carl Sagan. This is a 13-part series. These are all digitally remastered, special feature stuff. So Sagan, one of the I put him at one of the better known. He didn't really specialize in theoretical physics. He was more of just like a science guy in general. He combined astrophysics, biology, evolutionary biology, things like that. That he just had he was interested in various disciplines. And this basically ties it all of his disciplines together. It's about our place in the universe. This one's I think it's called subtitles A Personal Voyage, but it's fantastic. It's got a lot of heady concepts that are made less heady by Sagan in his way of explaining things. The music's great, a lot of classical pieces and things like that, very well known classical pieces, and I've talked a little bit about the soundtrack on this channel. It's also it's just a good resource to have. There's a book called Cosmos as well, but again, it's sometimes it's a little easier to see things played out on a television screen than in a book and reading words and how things actually work. It talks about different theoretical physics concepts, astrophysics concepts, biological concepts, things like that, how things kind of play out, are placed in the universe. Sagan's a person who would question things more than others, not take things really at face value if there was some scientific explanation behind it, which I think is very, very important. In looking in thinking about science is also very important, rather than try to just disregard empirical evidence as truth. Rather look at that empirical evidence and make a scientific hypothesis of why things are the way they are, why things how we can change things. There's not to get political, but there's various different things that can be at least in my opinion maybe a little bit better in terms of respecting science and listening to our scholars, scientific scholars, and respecting their words and not buying into the fact that your opinion is greater than science. So Cosmos, good stuff. I think that's pretty much it. It's a pretty small library of nonfiction type DVDs. I do recommend you check out this stuff. I think Cosmos, both the Cosmos series are great. Hawking's Universe is great. Some of the stuff, the Joe Campbell's Power of Myth, if you haven't seen that before, I would check that out. And Tibetan Book of the Dead, I'd recommend those among the others. That's pretty much it. Keep reading, keep watching shows, keep trying to improve the mind. That's what it's all about. We can watch comedies. Comedies are fun. I love comedies, but I think there needs to be some a variation from time to time. Learning, trying to improve the knowledge base in terms of science, and enjoying things on a lighter level. I think some of these actually combine the two. There's some, I think inherent comedy in the Sagan stuff from time to time. Maybe some ironic type stuff, not so much low brow. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or you wanna reach out, let me know. I'm around. I'm gonna post this on my Facebook as well. And we'll talk soon. See ya.